welcome to the Writer's Journey, an author meet session organized by the Ink and Quill Collective. Today, I'm thrilled to have with us Mr. Shehan Karunatilaka, who is well known for his Booker Prize-winning novel, The Seven Moons of Maali, Almeida, originally published as Chats with the Dead. His other works include his first novel, Chinaman, The Legend of Pradeep Mathew, which won both the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature and the Commonwealth Prize in 2012. He is also the author of multiple children's books with wonderful titles, such as Please Don't Put That in Your Mouth, Those Sneaky Plans, and I'm Never Ever Going to Sleep. And most recently, Hatchet India. Yes, those are the ones. And most recently, Hatchet India published a book of his short stories, Birth Lottery and Other Surprises. So, Mr. Shehan, welcome to the 9th episode. How are you doing today?
Good. So I've come off 2 years of continuous touring, and I kind of drew a line in October. And now I'm back to doing normal stuff. Like, I wrote in the morning, dropped the kids at classes, dropped one at a birthday party, did the rounds. And back to the routine. So yeah, it's good. It's welcome because I haven't written for the last 2 years, but I'm reworking those short stories that you mentioned, Birth Lottery. It looks like I'm doomed to rewrite every damn book twice. So this one also I'm rewriting. But yeah, I'm doing some kids' books. The one I flaunted before, The Ant That Walked to the Edge of the World. This is just about to go to printer. It's Apocalypse Now with insects, basically. And so, yeah, I've been back into the routine, and I've been enjoying that because, yeah, I've spent the last 2 years traveling on stage with microphone, which is a very unnatural place for a writer to be. This is my natural habitat. You can't see my messy room because the blur's on, but yeah, back to the routine.
There are pictures of Shehan's workroom at Shehan's website itself, so you can have a sneak peek there, it's wonderful. So, but today's session, Shehan, you have a wonderful team with you, and we cannot begin our session without mentioning Aitana. So wherever you are, if you're watching this, thank you so very much for helping us make this show happen. And so Mr. Shehan, your journey as a writer has been incredible, right? Something any writer would dream to live. So does the world now look different from where you are right now?
Well, it's been incredible for the last 2 years since October 2022. Before that, I was a jobbing writer like the rest of us, worrying, should I take on more jobs this week? Can I pay the rent in 6 months? And can I get this damn novel finished? And that's what I was, with Chinaman. Chinaman did better than expected. It got published worldwide and won some awards. But, I was still a freelance copywriter. But I think during COVID, all that solidified where suddenly every client moved to work from home. And so I was able to balance both those things. And yeah, as you know, the history is well documented. Finally finished, after 7 years, finished Seven Moons, sent it to the printer, and then Sri Lanka collapsed. And in the midst of 2022, when we're all in these petrol queues, that's when I got the news of long list for the Booker. And that's, then the journey, shortlist was fine, but then when you win the thing, and you got to realize before that, the book struggled to find a publisher outside of India. Even if it had got, there's another universe with a different set of judges where, it got published and it probably was kindly reviewed and it just became another South Asian book. So I was kind of prepared for that, as all of us are. We keep writing, we keep doing our day jobs, paying our bills, and somehow finishing what we have. And we hope the 7th, 8th, 9th book might make it big. So in this case, I guess I was lucky. 15 years and 2 books later, this thing won this prize. But the thing is, the third book is not going to write itself, as I found. And it doesn't get easy. It's still, I'm here with my mess of notes I figured out the first few chapters. I'm not sure if it worked. So you're back to the usual problems. Those don't get any easier, and nor should they. But yes, the last 2 years I guess I'm a proper writer now. And all this time I was a guy who wrote novels on the side. And
yeah. So while we delve more deeper into your work and talk about your inspirations, right, where you get that from while working on any particular project, would you help us, mind introducing our audience to the world of Sri Lankan English writing or Sri Lankan writing in general, including the works that kind of like inspired you and perhaps ones that are underrepresented?
Well, see, thankfully, I mean, like, it's hard to put that in a few sentences because there's a lot to talk about. And that wasn't the case when I was growing up in the 80s. You had Sri Lankan books somewhere in the corner of the bookshop, and it was usually self-published. And a lot of it was almost trying to sound English, trying to sound like Hemingway or E.M. Forster or Graham Greene, and almost to say, yeah, we may be Sri Lankan, but we can also write like Englishmen. We're competent, but they were very kind of unconvincing. And I often wondered, why can't there be Sri Lankan sections, Sri Lankan books next to the bestsellers and so on? And I guess, again, luck in the 90s when I started writing as a young man, that's when Michael Ondaatje won the Booker Prize for English Patient and set up in Sri Lanka, the land of his birth, the Gratian Prize. And I think that's really where you can look at least Sri Lankan writing in English, 92 onwards, before and after the Gratian Prize, because Jam Fruit Tree by Carl Muller won the first one, and I've talked at length about, it's not perhaps that well known outside of Sri Lanka and maybe India, but that for me was as seminal as Ondaatje's Running in the Family or Ramesh Gunasekara's Reef or Funny Boy by these are all books that came out in the 90s. Ramesh Gunasekara's work was it was awarded internationally. Selvadure wrote this coming of age gay story, which was 1995, quite ahead of its time. But Carl Muller wrote Like a Drunken Burger Uncle. It was a body, the Jam Fruit Tree, and that saga. And I think a lot of us writing in the 90s suddenly were like, we don't have to sound like Englishmen who lived 100 years ago. We can talk in our own street. So I think that was the start. And now the Gratian Prize attracts, I think, at least, up to 100 entries. And now you get Sri Lankan writers in science fiction, genre fiction. Vajra Chandrasekhara won the Nebula, I think. It was nominated for the Hugo. Amanda Jayat is writing thrillers. But Sri Lankan writing, I mean, since the Booker, it's had quite a good run if you count the awards. Sugi Ganeshanandan's Brotherless Night has been garlanded, everything from the Women's Prize to the Carol Shields. I think Shankari Chandran, Miles Franklin, and this all happened in the space of a year. So this is quite a long way from having like no place on the bookshelf a generation ago to now lots of writings and coming out of all parts of the country. And so, yeah, I can share my reading list with you. There's plenty. There's literary fiction. There's obviously fiction about the war. There's comic stuff, the works of Ashok Ferry and Carl Muller. And now there's genre fiction as well. So I think obviously Sri Lanka's had quite a turbulent 70 years. We've had, the civil war and the insurrections, and even the last 5 years, economic collapse, and then suddenly miraculous recovery, and now the commies are in power and everything's fine, and we've kicked out everyone. And so there's plenty of material here. So I guess now we have a generation of writers who grew up with all these conflicts and who are maybe now have the chops to tell these stories. So I think I can chart it to all the writers of my generation in the 90s, inspired by the Ondaatjes and the Gunasekaras, now have come of age, and there's plenty to talk about because it's a shitstorm in Sri Lanka. So yeah, there's a lot of stories coming out, but I guess the next step is now to see the languages unified, the Sinhala literature, the Tamil literature, which work in silos, and there's not enough translation in between, and I guess that's the next stage, to have that national literature. But certainly plenty of stories to share. And of course, we've also been inspired by our neighbors, by the golden age of Pakistani writing, and Indian writing, the Rushdies and the Arundhati Roys, who also showed us that we can tell our own stories and our own voices. So I think it is an exciting time for Sri Lankan writing. Hopefully that can translate into other. I've seen it in theatre. There's a lot happening in local theatre. Our cinema and the music, the hip hop is actually, hip hop's where I see the maybe our greatest art form, Tamil hip hop and Sinhala hip hop. But yeah, it is a moment.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing. But now, in today's session, we'd also like to visit your initial years of writing. So you've mentioned that your first manuscript, right, The Painter, which was, I guess, part of the Grecian shortlist, right, was never published, and perhaps you've had many others that you rejected. As writers, we often find ourselves very attached to our work, no matter how bad they are, right? We are blind to that concept. But we'd like to know a bit more about your self-rejection process, and by that I mean that is it not so satisfactory plot or prose, or perhaps the feedback from your beta readers, personal beta readers, that helps you determine what goes out to the world or what doesn't?
Yes, I think before Chinaman, I have a lot of abandoned novels where or ideas, short stories, where I've done 30, 40 pages and then realized I need to research this and got lazy or whatever. I think Chinaman was the first time actually, I quit my job at that time to finish this thing because I thought, okay, I'm going to finish it at least and put in the work and the research. But now I don't throw anything away, and also I know that everything is the first few drafts are going to be crap. I acknowledge that. So even the stories I'm writing now, it's not quite in the place it needs to be, but I'm just hammering through it, and I'll put it aside and come back to it in a few months, and that's the process. And I think, look, okay, 2 novels and a short story collection, and even that I'm kind of redoing. It stays in the drawer because the stuff that now, even Chinaman was an abandoned short story from the 90s about what if the greatest cricketer had played for Sri Lanka in the 1980s, and it was and I just thought no one's going to be interested in a cricket story, so I'd written and I perhaps didn't have the angle, didn't have the voice, but I don't throw it away. And now, back in the day, I'd print it out and keep it in my drawer or in a file. Now it's all on hard disks and computers, but I keep going through those docs. And I remember around 2007, what if the greatest cricketer had been a Sri Lankan called Pradeep Mathew? I realized if a drunken uncle told that story, I could make it work. And that I think I had a drunk, yeah, that's right. I'd been to a wedding and watched a punch up. These 2 uncles at 2 a.m. were throwing biryani at each other. And it was quite hilarious. And I wrote a little short story about it, but I had no idea what they were fighting over. And then going through old journals, I had this cricketer thing. And I thought, of course, they were fighting over cricket. What else? They're not going to get this riled up over women or politics, maybe politics, but it's cricket. And so when those collided, then I realized I have at least a novella here, and but started researching. But I guess the thing is, except the first few drafts but just getting the idea down and putting it away, and then getting on to the next one and the next one, and then when they are ripe, one is worth working on. So, and that's so the ant book thing, I always wanted to write something about insects, and did the research and filled the pages. And then last year, I watched Apocalypse Now Redux, and I thought, okay, ant that goes rogue and has to be tracked down by a cockroach and a mantis. That's an idea, and then you make it work. So I would say don't throw anything, but also don't expect perfection on the first. The thing you got to let it cool and come back to it. If you come back to it after a year, you may see something in there. And even Maali Almeida came out of the carcass, Chats with the Dead, I suppose. Maali Almeida had Chats with the Dead. Chats with the Dead came out of the carcass of this novel called Devil Dance, which was a slasher horror that I'd written in 2013. It attempted, 11 aid workers on a bus going through the tsunami country. One by one, they get knocked off. We've seen this movie many times, and I couldn't make it work for whatever reason, but threw it away or put it aside, came back, and there was no redeeming features of it, except the ghost on the bus was a dead war photographer called Maali Almeida. And I'd done detailed character sketches for all of the 11 on the bus. I'd spent 6 months doing character sketches, but the characters were dead on the page. But this Maali Almeida, who I'd done no research, suddenly was speaking in this very distinctive, kind of interesting voice. And then I realized, okay, forget all of and this was like 300 pages. It had taken a year or 2 of my life. So that's the thing. I guess you all know it takes just as long to write a crap book as it does a book a winning novel. You still do it. So 300 pages, I threw it away, but I had this guy Maali Almeida, and I thought, okay, I'll write a thing about him. So I think that is the lesson, that if you're patient enough, there'll be something in there, and if you keep at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 2 books in 15 years, not a great batting average. I hope to, increase that. Now I have more leisure time. I don't have to take on assignments for clients anymore. Not for a while.
All right. So usually, like what I understand from your process is that the character and the character becomes very important for you. Like for you to actually be comfortable with the project and to move ahead with that project. Is it usually the case for every work that you do, that the character first comes first and then the setting and the plot?
The voice.
Oh yeah, the voice. Okay.
So the plot and the setting, yeah, they may come first. The idea may be sparked by that. But I don't have a thing to work on until I have a voice. And that's true of even an article. Like I write a travel article, and I still do a bit of feature writing. And again, even me going on holiday, it's a slightly different me to the me commenting on the new Sri Lankan government, writing for it's always a different voice. And like every writer, I procrastinate, and it's on the day before the deadline. I take 2 weeks to get the first sentence and the first paragraph. And I'll spend the whole week getting that first paragraph. But once the tone of the piece, whether I'm commenting about Daragale or politics or talking about the cool place down in Gaul, once the voice comes and I know that first paragraph, then the rest of it, so it takes 2 weeks for the first paragraph, 2 hours, the rest of the article's written. And so I found that with even writing an email, even answering an email, you're like, well, I want to be polite, but I don't want to, I want to be a bit forceful as well. And so you got to get in the zone of the voice. But it's been the case with every one of those short stories, and certainly with Maali, Almeida, and W.G. Karunatilaka. Pradeep Mathew, I had all the ideas, the cricketing stories I'd collected. I knew Pradeep's career and where he took, I'd done all that research, but until I had the voice of these stories being told by a drunken journalist who tells tall stories and memory may be faulty. And once I could do that, I could tell this tall tale. And also it became enjoyable for me to wake up every morning and spend time with this voice, because also writing, it's not your, I mean, there you could probably recognize traits in my voice across the work, but I feel I'm trying on a different voice with everything. So with Maali, Almeida, because he's a very different generation to me. He's a boomer who grew up with idealism in the 80s. I was a Gen Xer, and we weren't going to go to the front lines and take photographs and risk being killed. We sat and watched MTV and just let the bombs. But that generation, so I had to put my head in the mind of that idealist who thought he could save the world with his pictures. So I think voice with every story. At the moment, I'm writing a story about, apparently there's 2 aunties who go to weddings in Colombo, gate crash weddings, and steal stuff. This is, I don't know if it's true. I would like this to be true, and I thought I will write this. But again, now finding the voice. Is it the aunties telling the story? And I've done the uncle voice. I should be able to do the auntie voice. But again, I think I know the plot. I think I know how these aunties get into these weddings and get out. No one's going to question Auntie in a sari, right? Yeah. I go crash a wedding, I get shown the door, but an auntie in a sari can get anywhere and slip anything into a handbag. So yeah, sorry, I'm rambling a lot, but yeah.
No, it's okay. It's fun. It's fun.
The voice starts rambling back to me. I think that's the process. Hopefully tomorrow I'll wake up and this auntie will be telling about this wedding she went to of this politician and what happened, and then I will just transcribe it. But yes, until you have the voice, you don't have anything to go with. And the problem is the voice can't be contrived. You can contrive plot. There are formulas for plot. You can go to a setting and think, okay, I can describe this texture and all that. You can contrive all the other elements. Even stock characters, there are archetypes you can lean on, but the voice of the thing, I think that has to come from, who knows where it comes from, but you have to wait for it and be patient, and yeah, that comes from the daily practice.
Yeah. So one thing that's obviously very evident from your short stories as well as the full-length novels is voice. Like every story has got its unique element out there, but there's also this approach of humor that you use in your fiction works. And humor is something very difficult to achieve, which we find. Could you tell us a little bit more about how to work with humor in a story which is riddled with so much violence, say for example in Seven Moons and other stories. How do you approach humor in such stories?
Well, I think it is part of the Sri Lankan character. We have this gallows humor, and you see it in all these fractured countries. There's gallows humor in Lebanon, and we lived through that. What we thought was a never-ending war, and we've been from catastrophe to catastrophe. And thing is, though a lot of grim, depressing things happen in Sri Lanka, it's not a grim, depressing place. It's quite a cheerful, and yeah, they're always cracking jokes. And now on the internet, the memes and all of that. So I think it was always part of our national character when talking about these things. But also, I guess I'm attracted to that kind of voice as well. Kurt Vonnegut is the source I keep bringing up. Douglas Adams writing about the meaninglessness of existence and humanity's tiny place in the universe, insignificant place. But it's not a depressing book. It is at times, but it's a laugh. And so is Kurt Vonnegut talking about the fact that we're just barbarian monkeys who are going to destroy this planet and ourselves, and nothing of anything will ever matter. But it's riotous, and you kind of chuckle while it's there. And I've been attracted to that. Also, I think this is for me, the only way to write about the Sri Lankan conflict, because also Sri Lanka, I think if there's a through line in my stories, it's absurdity. It's a land of absurdity, and I'm sure it's certainly not the only one. But the absurdity with our obsession with our national sport, and the absurdity of that 30-year war and the different wars we got entangled in. And so that for me was a way in choosing these protagonists who had this sarcastic way of looking at the world. I mean, WG is drinking himself to death and has a few months or years to live. But he sort of sees the funny side of his predicament and Sri Lanka's predicament, as does Maali. Almeida is watching his corpse being chopped up, but he's got that catty kind of closet queen sense of humor. And I think having these voices to talk through helped me with, if I written a straight-faced book about cricket or about the war, it certainly would have been less fun to write and probably not much fun to read. And so it wasn't like I did the thing and added the jokes. The humor was very much part of the way of discovering. The opening scene, the guy's watching his body getting chopped into pieces and chucked in a lake, but he's still kind of a bit vain about how his hair, he's looking at his bald spot. There was something in that. And I think also the absurdity of an atheist waking up in the afterlife. And he's like convinced there can't be a God or any system or anything beyond this, because he's witnessed hell on earth, and then he's in this bureaucracy and he has to get his number stamped, and someone's gone to lunch and he has to get his ears checked. And so you're still talking about serious stuff, but I think the humor helps it along. And the new book, there's no cricket in it, there's no ghosts in it, no corpses, but there's a fair few jokes in it. I think that's, if you're writing about Sri Lanka, at least for me, that seems to be the easy way to go.
All right, awesome. So the other thing that I want to talk about is, while we've talked about protagonists and their voice and everything, I'd like to talk about the satellite characters or the supporting characters of your story, because there are like a diverse range of personalities that you use. So what is the process for adding these characters into your story and developing them?
Yeah, now I'm going to have to relearn that process, because I don't think it's giving too much away. It's the first book was in the first person, the second book was in the second person. So the third book has to be in the third person. So I'm doing an ensemble kind of thing where there's not one major character, there'll be a bunch. So let's figure that out. But the last time I did an ensemble piece was that fated devil dance thing where I had 11 people on a bus. And I remember then I did character sketches, and I did 6 months of what this person likes to have for breakfast on a Sunday, what their favorite ice cream is, what movie they like, just nonsense which you think is going to give you insight. And once I got to the Maali Almeida, so I didn't do any of that. I just sort of they appeared on stage. I knew there was going to be an angel and demon on his either shoulder, like in the cartoon. So Dr. Rani and Sena Patirana, the Marxist and the activist. And then I knew, so then their characters were based on, they're all based on sort of real life victims of that period. So Rajan. So that came, but I think also I had this bank of unsolved crimes of that period. So a lot of the ghosts are based on, or chats with those ghosts are based on, victims of that period. So I didn't overthink it, and I think then I just had to do the ecosystem of how you to get rid of a body. It takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a committee to get rid of a body, because you need the garbage man to do the dirty work. You need the cop to cover it up. You need the driver to transport things. You need a politician, and so once these people appeared on stage, I just sort of let them speak, which sounds a bit spooky and weird, but I found that preferable to the whole do your homework and bring these characters like almost like you're the puppet master doing it. That approach didn't work for me. It was more, he's Maali Almeida's in the afterlife. There's a woman behind a counter. What's the exchange going to be? And you draw on your exchanges with women behind counters, and then suddenly characters evolve from there. So it was much more organic. And I think even with Chinaman, I knew there was Pradeep Mathew and WG and his sidekick. But beyond that, I guess plot informed where character would appear. So you'd think, okay, his coach, his girlfriend, his Tony Botham, that character appears. And I try and get the characters to speak to me, which is again a weird thing, and that's happens only at 4 a.m. if you wake up continuously. Then you wake up and suddenly the garbage men are having an argument over whether they need to cut off the fingernails or and hammer out the teeth, or whether the crocodile, like having this mundane argument about body disposal, and I just write that down, and then you're writing in their voices. So after the first draft, then I chart where I've got to and look at who the interesting characters are. But again, it's a process of sometimes the least interesting ones get amalgamated into two. And but yeah, you had Maali, his family, and his girlfriend and boyfriend. And I remember when I was editing with Natanya Jans, who transformed chats into 7 Moons, she said, your middle class characters seem very nuanced and complex, but your working class characters all seem one-dimensional. And basically calling me a class snob, which is a fair comment. And I said, yeah, you're right. And that's where I went. And if you look at, say, the good cop and the bad cop, Rancha Goda and Kasim, it's they're both corrupt, but one thinks he works for the state and does whatever his masters tell him. The other one thinks he's actually helping the innocent and doing justice. And even the garbage man, one guy is a trained butcher and thinks he's good at this and does it like a job. The other one is a thief who can't find a job and he hates this work, but there's no other work for him. And so then, once you go through draft, you interrogate where you've come up with stereotypes, where they're kind of weak, where all of that. But now the approach is just let them turn up and start talking and see what they say.
All right.
But I know people who do big plots. They do the architecture of the novel. They know the ending. They do character sketches. It's all done, and then they smash the novel through in a few weeks. The Lee Childs, the Pattersons, those guys who have books in the store every time you go in there. That's their formula, and it works. So maybe don't listen to me, because I'm 2 books in 15 years. So if you want to be prolific, maybe plan, but I don't plan. I let them talk.
Yeah. Is this the same strategy you apply for settings as well? Because in 7 Moons, it was like grand, right? I know it was inspired a lot from the folklore of Sri Lanka and folklorish characters and the devils and the demons and everything. So do you kind of structure your setting on the go as and when you're writing the story?
So setting, I mean, if you mean the afterlife, that's a bit tougher because I haven't visited there, and it's tough to interview anyone who's visited there. So that was a bit more challenging. But I knew the Beira Lake, for instance, where the bodies were dumped. I think that when I knew there's going to be a cemetery scene, there's going to be the legendary fourth floor, which again, I haven't thankfully visited, but I knew some friends. The fourth floor is where you get taken. The white van comes and takes you in the dark days if you are heard in a pub criticizing the government and you end up in the fourth floor. And so those settings, I had to talk to people. The Beira, I visited a lot. Yeah, I spent a lot of time at the cemetery, a lot of time. Beira Lake is lovely now. Please visit if you come to Sri Lanka. You can do rides and there's hotels and cafes. But in the 80s, it stank and you'd get bodies hanging on tires. And so I kind of just wanted to preserve that lovely memory of for the future generation who thought the Beira Lake was like Central Park, just to say that. But so those cases I did. But with the afterlife, it's challenging right now. So I went to the literature. I went to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Dante's Inferno. Watched movie The Lovely Bones. There's many movies of the afterlife, and I think you can. In the end, I constructed it like a Sri Lankan bureaucracy, a Sri Lankan passport office, because that made sense to me, that the afterlife isn't a place where all your questions are answered and the universe makes sense and your life makes sense to you. No, it's a Sri Lankan, you got to get your things stamped and you got to figure out your sins and get your year checked and you got to do it in 7 days and there's no one to help you and there's people giving you contradictory advice. And that came from, again, having spent enough time in Sri Lankan bureaucracy. But the rest I sort of, I guess you make up. So there's bits of Sri Lankan folklore, the stuff about the pretas and a bit of Tibetan Buddhism as well and of course, a lot of Hindu folklore. The Mahakali is obviously, there's a lot of resemblance with the goddess Kali. And so I borrowed a lot. And the thing is this, no one can prove me wrong until much someday. And you just need to, the main thing was to make the rules consistent. Because I'm not a big fantasy novel. I used to be a big horror reader, and it used to always annoy me when suddenly on the third act, he can get invisible. Who knew that? And suddenly he gets himself out of the third act jam with some power so I had to have the rules that ghosts can, go with the wind, go where your name is spoken, go where your body has been, and set those. So that took a bit of construction. But the rest, Sri Lanka is a great set. And I had this plan of writing it around Sri Lanka because there's ghost stories around there. But I think setting in Colombo helped a lot because I could visit those places. But I'm not a big describer. I don't know. Maybe the third novel will be a bit different. A lot of the descriptions I ended up just paring down. And I guess it was that type of book. Let's see, the next one with the ensemble thing, it might be nice and Dickensian with lots of big description. Who knows? Again, it's a book. I'm waiting to hear the voice of that book, which hasn't spoken to me yet. But it'll
all right. Awesome. So now we'd like to move to the editing part, and I'd like to know about habits or strategies that you follow to ensure that your edits kind of refine rather than dilute your story.
Well, the edit, so I kind of, your grandma said chew your food 32 times. I kind of chew the prose every time. So I'll write it as it comes the first few times. Then you come back and you think, does this make sense? Is the character? And so every time I boot up my computer, I'm going through that stuff. So it gets edited on the go. And, third time you come around, you're like, okay, so it makes sense. The character's voice is right, but is it good writing? Is this the right word? Is this metaphor? Pull the right levers? You're doing all that technical stuff. And then I'll come back and I do that who knows how many times until you stop doing it, I guess. You do it until there's no commas left to take out and it's flowing, the rhythm is right. So it's only then that I show people. And then I've lost a lot of readers. If you have a beta reader, I guess this kind of community helps, right?
Yeah.
Take them for lunch, buy them drinks, give them hugs. They're very valuable people. I think with this, I inflicted these drafts onto, and I lost a lot of, they're still my friends, but it's a lot to ask of someone to proofread a bad 300-pager. So I feel kind of guilty, and so I make sure I do all of that. But also now I'm fortunate that I have a professional editor with the publishers, so I'll send her the stuff. Natanya Jans, who'll be working on my new book as well. She, very polite. Lots of these publishing people are very polite, even when they're rejecting your manuscript. They're, what a wonderful achievement! It's a daring new voice in literature. Unfortunately, it's not for us. We don't think that or the character or the writing style works for us. But good luck, congratulations, and you have to like read a few times to realize, oh, they've actually rejected me. And Natanya was she got terrific work, Shehan. I think we're almost there, and almost, you hear the almost, we're almost there, but the beginning still is very confusing. The ending doesn't quite work for me. Middle's a bit boring. And then she'd go into nitty gritty. And I've worked in advertising most of my life. I'm used to client changing copy. That's and I think I got a thick skin, but it's always a bit. Your first reaction is, what the hell? Do you know how long I worked on that 20-page scene of bodies being fed to cats? She goes, yeah, it's very evocative, but I don't think it belongs in this book because bodies being fed to cats on page 50, you're not going to get an international audience this way. And so the cat scene was reduced to one sentence. Balal and Kottu have a little bit of banter, and that's the cat scene. That was a 30-page scene. So this is good editing. And I realized, yeah, you're right. I'm just trying to put my horror movie things into this, and it doesn't advance the plot. And so she speaks sense, but also I push back on certain things. I would push back on, I think some of the gay scenes. She thought there was too much sex in the book. And I said, but the whole point of his hedonism is that he's like the kids say, YOLO. There's no afterlife. This is his one life. He's never going to get married. It's the 1980s. So he's going to screw whatever he wants. And we need to, and show the dynamic of that. And then also, by contrast, show that there is tenderness to this. So I kind of argued that point, and we still cut out a fair few. There's still a bit of sex in the book. So you can imagine how pornographic the book was before the Taja thing. So we kept in the best scenes. And so it was always kind of a back and forth that way. I remember Chiki Sarka with Chinaman was, one of the comments was, we'd like to correct the grammar, correct the syntax. And I said, no, that's how Sri Lankan uncles would speak. Let's put a drink is not grammatically correct, but they're not going to say, let's go for a drink, Machan. They'll say, let's put a drink. And things like that I pushed back on. But I think if you find someone you trust, because this was all done during COVID, and this is the COVID where Chats with the Dead came out, didn't do anything, and of course, COVID happened and couldn't find a publisher. And during those 2 years, we thought we were doing like little tweaks, but we ended up rewriting the whole thing. And but I knew each edit later, the book was moving. It was the passages, the pacing was great. The digressions were actually making sense. It was. You realize when the pieces start falling into place, you realize you're in good hands. So I, again, buy your editor drinks and lunch and give them hugs, because this is also a valued relationship, and kind of, hold back your inner impulse to kind of bite their head off as soon as. That's why communication on email is good. So it comes in and you process it, and then you look at it, and mostly I think that they've got good advice, but in the end, it's your name that goes on the cover. So in the end, you have to take responsibility. And in the end, you can put your foot down and say, no, I think this scene has to happen. And there's that, but you shouldn't. I think if you use that, if you just kind of shut it down, no, this is my words and you're just there to correct my grammar. If that's what you do, I think you're missing out on a lot, because clearly, it was time well spent, because it went from a book that couldn't get published to winning this big prize. So I actually like the process. I like the editing process. The first draft is the worst. When you have nothing and you have to fill the page with something, that's the worst. Once you have something, even if it's a mess, putting it together, I don't mind that. But different writers, I know writers who hate editing and love the other parts. So whatever works. But
Yeah. So would you recommend somebody to read both versions, like Chats with the Dead as well as Seven Moons of Maali Almeida, to understand, like, the evolution of an editing process, like a really, really drastic editing process and how it can transform a work? So, I mean, like,
I
I'm
can't
curious.
make I can't make you nice people read my book twice. I can't be that greedy. So, and also, I wouldn't do it. Like, I just 7 years of doing that. I don't want to read that thing ever again. But Richard Simon, note this down. Richard Simon Chats with the Dead. He's a Sri Lankan burger friend of mine, terrific writer. He does a review which compares the two. And I
Nice.
think he makes some very good observations because he knew Richard de Soisa personally, was a friend. And he said, I avoided this book because didn't want to be triggered about Richard's death. Richard de Soisa, whose murder Maali Almeida is based on. But then he ran, I read the review because I think and he calls me out on a few anachronisms. But what he says is they use the same words to tell very different stories. And he really, so I would say Chats with the Dead is a earlier draft, and this Seven Moons is definitive refined version. I don't miss anything that was on the cutting room floor from Chats with the Dead because I think that had all the ideas. It roughly begins and ends the same way and has the same things, but it's very difficult to, I guess, if you're not versed in Sri Lankan politics and folklore. A lot of international readers found it difficult, I think. And again, it's your book, but there is a saying also, if enough people tell you you're drunk, you should probably sit down. And I found that with Chats, maybe, but I know a lot of Sri Lankan readers who say that that's what we prefer. Like there are people who prefer Apocalypse Now Redux with the plantation scene. They say, no, this is the definitive version. It's the raw thing and all that. But personally, I think Seven Moons is the culmination of that 2 years of writing. And it's a much tighter book. It knows what it wants to say, and the things land in the right places. So I wouldn't. I think it's strange. Chats with the Dead is for sale in India and Sri Lanka, and it still sells, which is, I feel a bit guilty about that. So I would just say, read Richard Simon's article. If you still feel the need, I can't stop you. But there are some great books in the world. You shouldn't be wasting time reading this one twice. Up to you. But Richard Simon's review article thing is well worth visiting.
Awesome. So one last question before we move to the Q&A, and it is about your publishing journey. Could you tell us about your experience reaching out to publishing houses for your first book, as well as in comparison to that, how was it like when you reached out to a Western publishing house for Seven Moons? What was the experience like, and what sort of tips would you like to give to us in terms of query letter, etc.?
Yeah, so I met Amit Varma, who was at the Ceylon. Well, I didn't meet him actually. I exchanged text, but he was the first guy who interviewed me when Chinaman was a manuscript at the Gaul Lit Fest. Would have been 2008 because Arthur C. Clarke and Gore Vidal were at that Gaul Lit Fest. So would have been that time, and I was just this, young guy with a manuscript, and he did a thing, and I was self-publishing Chinaman, and he gave me so he gave me basically the emails of HarperCollins, Kartika, and all the major publishing houses. So basically I spammed. I'd been up till that point, I'd been sending query letters and going through the websites. And back in those days, I used to actually post stuff. And I remember every Friday I'd post 5 query letter synopsis, first 20 pages, and send it out. And I thought it's a cricket book, so maybe South African agents, Australians, and around the cricketing world. I did that for a good 10 months before I got invited to the Gaul Lit Fest and met Amit and got that. And you'd learn from the responses you'd get, and you'd change up things and tighten your query letter and all of that. But the book, meanwhile, had been self-published, and but I thought, okay, I'm going to do this for a year before I give up on it. And I think, in the 10th month, Fiki Sarka, I sent it to her and immediately got that response. So there was that luck element involved as well. But I think also I met a lot of young writers and not so young writers who are like, I finished it and I sent it to 2 publishers and didn't hear back, and now I'm discouraged. And I think if that's the thinness of your skin, this is the wrong game. I think you need to have that. The insecurity is good. It'll make you write better prose, but then you have to kind of have that brazen, I wouldn't say arrogance or confidence, but the idea that someone is gonna like this book, and someone, I like this book, I put everything into it, someone will. And so I send it out every Friday with a prayer. And then, Chiki picked it up, and then again, we took out 150 pages, but she sold it to the UK and the US. But again, that journey, I didn't have an agent at the time. And they weren't great deals. And Chinaman still, I feel, has underperformed. It could have been, since 7 Moons, it's got a bump, but I was grateful. Writing a book about a left-arm spinner, are you kidding? Based in Sri Lanka, to pay a Random House and Jonathan Cape to publish it, I thought, okay, that's enough. And so, whatever, when you won a prize, that was even better. But when you write your first book, you don't think of your second book, right? You're thinking, I don't think, because also for Sri Lankan writers, there was no pathway. Now there is sort of a pathway, but then Carl Muller, that's why he was an uncle who wrote for the newspaper columns, and he had the penguin logo on his book, and that was a huge inspiration for us in the 90s. But generally, you self-published, and a lot of Sri Lankan writers do that. So that was the first journey. And then, 10 years later, it took me 10 years to write a second book. So whatever goodwill with Chinaman had, I suppose, evaporated. And but I had an agent at that stage. But again, I've told this story many times. It was just before COVID. India, there was a lot of interest because, Chinaman had done well in India. But international publishers, even fans of Chinaman, were like saying, it's a difficult book. It's no one remembers the Sri Lankan Civil War, the folklore and all that. We don't think a Western audience is quite gonna get this. And that was that. So it never, and I ended up just writing to friends, and Natanya Jans was, they'd done the rough guides. I don't know if you remember the rough guides. They were like Lonely Planet. I think they're out of print now, but the rough guide to Paris, the travel, whatever, not journals, but guides. And so I'd done some travel writing for her, and I sent her this manuscript, and I said, apparently, because my agent was like, well, no one remembers your war, and write me another book. We'll see. The first time he said, no one knows much about Sri Lankan cricket, so write me another book. And this time that was the excuse. And Nat said, I think it's got a lot of potential, but you need to rewrite it. So that was really the journey. So it's not really, it had a happy ending, obviously, but it was also a lot of you just keep doing the work and hopefully the book will find a home. But the irony is this, though, if 7 Moons, or Chats with the Dead as it was, had been picked up by one of the big houses, HarperCollins or Penguin or whatever, it probably wouldn't have been entered into the Booker Prize, because those big houses, they're going to have their big name authors and they're going to submit that stuff. So mine probably won't make it, but being with a smaller indie publisher, and also, are they going to spend 2 years editing a manuscript? Sort of publishers 5-6 books a year, so they'll spend more time, and they submit it for awards. And so in the end, that was the path to the happy ending. So I don't know what the lesson is, but also, it is nice to get a deal with one of the big houses, but sometimes a smaller house or a smaller agent. Do you want to be on a big name agent who's got 200 clients and a dozen superstars and you, or do you want to be with someone with a handful who will actually help your career? So for that, I guess that was the lesson I got with this, that I've been with the bigger name ones, and you really just have to find someone to love the book, and that's it's like finding someone to love you. I can't give dating advice. If you poured love into the book will be lovable. It may not be for everyone. And I know this, I do the cardinal sin of reading my Goodreads reviews. And there's a bunch of 5-star reviews posted, but there's a bunch of 1-star TNF. This book was a waste of time. My professor made me read this. What was the book of thinking? There's a lot of that stuff. So I don't, stuff you write is not for everyone. But you go to Jane Austen's page, you get exactly the same stuff. So you go to that's the game. But you just need one person or a few people to fall in love with it and champion it. And I think I was lucky that way. Chiki Sarka loved Chinaman and really, really pushed it, and Mark and Matt did as well. So I guess what's the advice here? Write a really good book, find someone who loves it, get really lucky. I think those are my 3 steps to doing it. But the only thing in your control is to write the really good book and pour the love into that. So I think that's it. But yeah. And now, who knows? I was posting stuff out. The game has fully changed now, and now you've got your book talks and also different avenues. You don't have to win literary prizes to get published now. I'm seeing Amanda Jayathis, the science fiction writers. They're getting deals with Tor, and they don't submit for the Duration Prize. I guess that's seen as like boomer uncle stuff. Now they've got their new ways of doing it. So yeah, sorry about the ramble. I don't know if I have big publishing advice other than get very lucky and don't give up.
Yeah, that was actually very sound advice out there, and we don't mind the rambling at all, because there were so many interesting gems out there, and it's been very useful. So thank you so much. So we'll move on to the Q&A, and we'll take like a few questions. Suchitra asks, "Hi Shehan, loved 7 Moons. Thank you for it." Her question is, how did you find an authentic non-global north or non-colonial voice when most of the books on the craft of writing are written by the global north?
Global north. So now we're the global south now. We used to be the third world, which is a much cooler name, I think. Sounds like a punk band. I always preferred that. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. That was true, my dad's generation for sure. Being a writer in that generation, you look at the prize list, it was all the Kingsley Amises, it was all basically like everything. It was white men in suits winning. You didn't get hairy, long-haired brown men winning Booker Prizes till Marlon James and all did that. So, sorry, I'm kind of, what was the question?
So she's basically asking, I think the question is more about, while the writing guidelines, like how to write, is written by the Western.
Okay. So I would say, so that was the case before, but I think now the sounds of our own voices, I think there is a readership in it. And I think for me, that was the lesson, and that was my journey as well, that do we need another detective story set in London or LA or New York? But you set a detective story in Karachi or in Dhaka or in Saigon, and suddenly there is some flavor to it. And really, if you look at 7 Moons, it's all pretty established tropes. It's a murder mystery, and it's, the corpse is the detective, that's the only difference, but it's a murder mystery with the tropes of the murder mystery, but it's set during that Civil War. And so I think there is that appetite. I mean, even if you look at how we watch Netflix now, it's not... when we were growing up, we grew up watching, showing my age, but VHS, watching the Rambos and the Chuck Norris movies. That's what the Hollywood movies, that was it, and a bit of Bollywood. But now, I'm watching a Spanish comedy where some of us are watching Squid Game, Korean soaps, Korean action movies, Korean horror movies. We're watching from all over, and the subtitles don't bother us. And I think actually it makes it more interesting watching a noir thriller coming out of Thailand rather than the same old from the West. So I don't know if that's the case, because I count myself quite fortunate to be writing in this generation where, there is an appetite for voices from the so-called global South or the third world. So I would say the opposite, like embrace the unique voice you have, and if you can make that work, of course you still have to write a story that pages turn and keeps interest and all that. But I don't think to be afraid of the voice is, especially not in this day and age. That's one advantage we have. The whole world is going to shit, but at least we can write in our own voices, and chart it.
True that. So there's the next question about research process. It's by Mock Rocks. I don't know if the name's correct, but what is your research process for a book? Do you have any suggestions for aspiring writers how to go about this research process?
Yeah, so I love the research phase because it's procrastination really. When you there's a
Same here.
line between
Love
that,
it.
there's a line because you're not supposed to do anything. You're like the Chinaman. That's why I wrote Chinaman, because for a year I just watched cricket matches, read cricket books, hung out with uncles at bars, drinking arak, talking cricket. It was glorious research, and I do get lost in that. So I do say at the moment I'm writing some short stories, vaguely Cold War-ish, we're going through World War III in case no one noticed. And, we had the classic Cold War thrillers of the 60s, 70s. I'm kind of doing one for this era. And so in preparation, I'm researching global geopolitics, with the BRICS and what's happening in the West. But I'm also reading stuff from that era. I'm reading old Ian Flemings. I'm reading Ira Levin, Alastair MacLean. I'm reading that. So my research is one part, researching the facts of, say, cricket, or say, the afterlife. And I'm not a big academic. I'm not writing a thesis. It's not going to be fact checked. I just need enough facts so I can weave a convincing lie, as Stephen King says. And I'll get the facts of whatever the topic is, but I also read stuff that I'd want to sound like. So Seven Moons, like I said, Kurt Vonnegut and Tom Robbins, George Saunders, Margaret Atwood to get that voice. But I also read a lot of noir because I realized there is some noir. I read some classic Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, and watched a lot of horror movies. So that's also part of the process. And that's again the borderline between procrastination. You're sitting on the couch watching Paranormal Activity 5 and your wife's going, why don't you do some work? I'm working. I'm researching how ghosts move through walls so I can write that chapter. And so but I spend a lot of time in it because it's the most fun. Like this one, I don't have to write anything. I just have to understand how global geopolitics works and do that. But of course, I like that period because whatever I write is bonus. So in that period, you're writing with no pressure. So the stuff that you write, then you find actually you're writing more freely because you're not expected to do the book. You're still in the research phase. But so I do interviews. I do, a lot of desktop research, a lot of reading, but a lot of kind of trying to find that tone. If you're, now, again, I'm giving you my ensemble thing, may or may not be set in a Sri Lankan workplace. So I'm watching a lot of Aaron Sorkin kind of West Wing walk and talk stuff to get that vibe. So that's but I would spend, now say a short story, roughly takes me about 6 months. I'll spend the first 2 months doing that. I fill up, I have them here. I have like A3 papers full of scribbles. This is the new story I'm writing. It's just
Wow.
it's 20. Like once they get too heavy to carry, I think I've done enough, and then I just start paste them. Like a guy tracking a serial killer, I paste them on the walls, and from then I start typing. But it's all pencil, pen, and A3 paper. But I think you can't know too much, but you can waste too much time in the process of research. And so you should give yourself a deadline that, okay, I'm going to start writing. And even when you start writing, you'll be open to those things. But Stephen Pressfield, who's written, many books, The War of Art and many books on the craft of writing, hates this, says you're allowed 3 books. Okay, you're writing about oil pipelines, you read 3 books. That's it. You're not writing, an academic thesis or nonfiction. You don't need to have a big bibliography. 3 books should give you everything you need to know about. And he's actually right. If you want to write a book about cricket, 3 books probably would have been enough, but I read about 300. I procrastinated for a long time, but also it's the confidence. When you start writing, you're like, I don't know anything about the subject. Who's going to read anything I do? And once you put in those hours, you're like, okay, I have my 20 bundles of scribbled notes. I'm sure there's something in here that's interesting, and I do it. But so what I would say is research, writing the first draft, editing. Those are 3 different periods. keep them separate. Don't feel guilty that you're not coming up with a great first line in the research period. Don't feel guilty if the book doesn't make sense in that first draft period. Yeah, treat it like that. Worry about that in the edit. But no, research is fun. I hope you enjoy it.
Yep. So this is a question by Anaga, and it's related to the publicity of the book. She asked, from the time you published your first book to the most recent one, can you share your learnings from your experience in terms of spreading the word to have your book read?
Spreading the word.
Yeah.
Is that? So now you're talking about marketing.
Yeah, marketing and sorry, that would be the right word. Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked in the dark arts of marketing. I worked in advertising. I still do a bit of freelance things. Sorry. But the strange thing is creatives, marketing themselves, they're really bad. I've seen many people when they do their side hustle, like really creative guys, doing cupcakes and their ads are so boring. And it's like when they're doing it for themselves, they don't put in that creativity, or maybe they believe boring ads sell. But with marketing, it's now you have this and I know these young writers like Yudhanjay, Vijayaratna, they hustle themselves. They have their social media game and their followers, and they're constantly posting. And I actually blocked a lot of those guys. They're my friends, but it's like, oh, I wrote 2,000 words today, and then I got an offer from so-and-so, and then I just went to the gym and I've been eating ice cream and watching YouTube all day, and I'm like, screw you, man. And so I stopped. So I don't do any of that, but I'm told that I should share my process, my scribbles, and my messy room, and do all this if I want to build followers and all of that. I'm Gen X, like I say. We don't do that. So I'm not the best person to it. And also now, I have a social media team. I've become that guy. I have agents, publicists, and so there's no shortage of stuff happening. So it's different. But between the first and the second, I did. And also that was 2013, 14. So also these book talk and I heard a term, a horrible term, entrepreneurs. Is that the word? Entrepreneurs or basically creators who are entrepreneurs. It was an amalgam of that. But our generation, that's like a complete sellout, right? The artist is the artist, the record company guy is the record company guy, and there's that. But now the new generation, they do the work and the promoting is part of that. I didn't do much. I mean, I have a Facebook page. I have all these Insta. I don't know if it's clear to you guys. I don't look at, I've got a team who does all of that and answers. Even your email request for this, I barely returned a text even before the booker. So I'm pretty hopeless at that. But I'm the old school, just write a good book and they will come. But that's not the case. You do, So sorry, I'm not much help. Hire a team of young people who know this stuff, I would just say. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So before we conclude, would you like to share any parting words to our aspiring writers?
I don't have parting words. There were a few more questions. We can take a few more questions.
Oh, yeah? I do? All right. Awesome. Then we can take
I'll try not to ramble so I can get through as many questions, but let's do that.
All right.
So I'm not going to give you some trite, keep writing and don't give up, which is basically what I would tell you if I was giving you parting words is, you keep at it. I mean, even so in COVID, I had that moment where I thought, you know what, if no one reads this book, it's okay. I can write another one because, I've got enough clients. I've got now the setup is there. I can do it. And I'm just going to keep writing books and I'm going to keep writing. And then maybe one does well, and I think that's the state you got to be at. It easier said than done. Book comes out, but and you keep at it, and then suddenly when you're in a petrol queue, someone calls up saying you've been longlisted for Booker Prize. So these are things that could happen, but all you can control is keeping writing. But anyway, sorry, that's my nonsense wisdom. Give me some questions.
Yeah, so Ashni asks about your choice of writing in second person for Seven Moons. Was it like a result of many iterations, or did it come to you in the beginning and define the rest of the novel?
Yeah, this is a many asked question, so I'll give you the short answer. It's the voice in your head. So I tried first person. What does a ghost sound like? First person. Third person's a bit weird. I tried it. But I figured the voice in your head, what survives your death? We've all got voices in our head. Some have got more than one. And the voice in my head is in the second person. It's telling me you should have worn a better shirt for this interview. These are important people. You got to. It's someone telling me, you idiot, you should have done, like a coach. And I tried that voice for this, and that's so the voice telling the story is not quite Maali Almeida. It's not the Maali Almeida who lived from the 50s and died in the 80s. It's a slightly different. It's almost like his conscience, his soul, his and he questions that. But also that second person voice allows you, the voice in my head is not diplomatic. It's rude. It's like tells me it's not like any other voice. And so that voice could actually tell him, you've screwed up your life, you've been mean. And so I think, and also you try out different things and it seemed to work. 20, 30 pages later, it seemed to work. And then suddenly there was a book. So that, but the reason was the voice in your head is probably in the second person.
All right. So the next question is by Samin. The question is, a lot of times our stories are set in lands that readers across the world might not be aware of. How do you ensure that the story resonates universally?
So yeah, that was my measure for Chinaman, for everything I write, I think, is you can't control if it's going to sell, if it's going to be awarded, if it's going to be well reviewed. But I thought with Chinaman, if someone who knows nothing about Sri Lankan cricket, knows nothing about cricket, knows nothing about Sri Lanka, picks it up, they should be able to have experience with it. That was always, and that's why in Chinaman, there are all these little short chapters explaining the basics of cricket. So by page 50, and the cricket's not important. It's more about old men and obsession with sport, which is a universal thing. It's found a readership in America who know nothing about cricket because, those guys are obsessed with sport and, neglecting their family and drinking too much and arguing over sport. And so I think that was the measure, even with Seven Moons, was, if you know nothing about the Sri Lankan folklore or our war, dead guy has 7 days to solve his own murder is a trope that most people can latch on to. But when I write the first draft, I don't think of any of that. I'm just like, what would Maali Almeida have done? I'm just trying to tell the story to like a reader like me who knows about Sri Lanka. But it's during the editing that I think, okay, it should be read by anyone. I think that's the only measure that you can control. How it does is that's all marketing and that. But I think a good book does transcend. Look, we grew up reading the Russians and Murakami and reading, Yiddish words were like Philip Roth and stuff, Yiddish words in our books. And we kind of, we figured it out or looked it up. And so why not let the reader work a bit? I think it is a fine line in that editing process that you don't be explaining everything to a Western reader, but you don't want to make it difficult. So, yeah.
So our next question is by Gayatri. She is asking, how do you go back to your scribbled notes and not feel overwhelmed?
Coffee and lots of tea, lots of good sleep, meditation. Yeah, the overwhelm, that's again, thick skin and overwhelm. I wake up, I still, before I have to speak, I get nervous. Before I have to do an event, and every day before I wake up with this, is the story not working? So I do stop at one point now. Yeah, I think I've got enough pages, but I'm going to do a bit more research tomorrow morning before I write, and I'm going to fill it up. The overwhelm is there, but you just sort of, what's today? It's, maybe Monday. It's always good. So maybe I'll do all my research this week. Monday, I'm going to write 1,000 words, and then you just do those 1,000 words. And they'll be a horrible 1,000 words. They won't make sense. They'll be full of cliche. They'll be embarrassing, but you do the 1,000. So, you just force yourself to do it. But the overwhelm is that's a constant. And you can try different means of doing it. Some people prescribe, some people self-medicate. Meditation works, yoga works. much healthier ways of doing it. But yeah, WG had a bottle of Arak next to him when he wrote. But yeah, what I'm saying is that feeling that the story that you've spent 6 months on is not working and falling apart. And also, I don't know the ending. I'm not going to find a convincing ending. I didn't know who killed Maali Almeida when I wrote the first draft. I didn't know if WG would meet Pradeep. So I think that uncertainty is good. And some days you're going to have bad days where none of your notes are going to make sense. But yeah, turn up the next day or the next, and yeah, it'll make sense.
All right. The next question is by Sunil. How obsessed are you during the writing process? Did you take a sabbatical and review later?
Sabbatical, do I take time off to write?
Yeah.
No, it's a daily.
From work.
It's a daily. So even when I was working a day job, I'd wake up at 4, write for 4 hours, get to work at 9, and do. Yeah. And then when I became a freelancer, it's a daily practice. It's not like I'm going to go away for 3 months and do a draft of this novel. Some people say that. I wish I could be that person. I'm going to go and sit on the beach for 3 months and I'll have a draft of the novel. No, you won't. You'll sit on the beach for 2 months and read a lot of books and drink too much. And then you'll scramble something in the last month. And yeah, for me, that's been the experience. So it becomes a daily practice. And that's why on the road, it's been difficult because 2 months on the road, and I kind of like my comfortable, messy surroundings, and I don't work very well with jet lag and in hotel rooms. So yeah, pretty boring domestic existence is what works for me. I've been on writing workshops and residencies, and they are quite useful as well. But yeah, mine takes so long. I mean, this one, conservative, might 2 years if I can get it out, that would be a major achievement. But the last one took 7, and the one before that took 5. So who knows? But no, not so that sabbaticals don't work. But by all means, I think you have to find it in space in your daily, whether you're working or you've got kids and family and all these obligations. You've got to find that space. And for me, that was 4 a.m, because 4 a.m, which means you got to sleep at 8. You can't watch Netflix till 1 a.m or go to be drinking till midnight and do it. Which means a healthy sleep pattern. But 4 to 7. Yeah, the family's asleep, your phone's not pinging, the internet's asleep. I stay off the internet as well. And yeah, it's just you and quiet and your notes. And I just found, and that's when all the books got written. And I guess many of us don't have those 2-3 hours, but even if you have 1 hour precious time, that's what gets books done. Not this burst of 3 months. So, but you could be prolific genius and be able to do it, but it hasn't worked for me.
All right. So there are a couple of questions about the craft and tips about the craft, but I would like to ask you, like, if you were planning to have a masterclass on writing for, writers, what would your curriculum look like?
I've had to do a few, and so I've got a PowerPoint presentation waiting for you. Yeah, it's mainly a reading list, I think, if I remember rightly. It's a reading list. It's a few habits. It's a few. Yeah. I've done, because I never did a MFA myself. I also bought a lot of self-help books. I took these online master classes, and yeah. So yeah, I've got enough there, but mainly a reading list and a set of good habits. I think that's what. And yeah.
So would you mind sharing the reading list with us?
Yes, I can do that. Okay.
I'll reach out to Aitana to remind her.
Give me send IT an email and I'll send you those slides. Yeah. That's good.
All right, I'll do that. And also there's somebody who's asking, what's your experience getting published in international literary magazine?
Have I been published in international literary magazines? I don't know if it's been published in a few things, but I'm still yet to crack the big ones like New Yorker or Atlantic, all that. So I don't know. You tell me. I guess I'm going to have to pester my agent now, because I have some new short stories, and I keep mentioning, we should get my agent. Every time I send him a short story, oh, terrific! I'll get this in the New York, and I never hear from him. again. So I should take him up on that. So yeah, I don't know that game. I guess it's a different game, but I'm guessing you need an agent or someone with fairly good contacts in those markets. I published in India, I believe, but my short stories, I've entered them into every single award. They haven't got jack. Maybe that should be the title of the book. But it made me. I put an aim like 2 stories a year, 3 stories a year, and I'd write them, submit them for all these things, magazines. Didn't get anything, but at the end of 10 years, I had like about 30 stories. So I guess that's the lesson. So short stories. I don't know how. If you know, please share.
We'll definitely set up a message, because this is a common struggle we all face. Like, we send out our work to multiple magazines and everything, but yeah, a lot of rejection letters come by, and we share it in our group, and then we talk about it. So yeah, do join us sometimes if you would like to.
You send without agents, is it?
Yeah, we send it without agents. There are usually open calls. There are certain websites like Submittable and all, which has got list of like open calls from different magazines. And you could have an account there, and you have the entire calendar set. Like, on these dates, there are open calls, and you could submit it.
Yeah, look, I'm on that same journey. Like, one year I'll read everything that wins the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, and I think, okay, I'm going to write something like that, and I do nothing. Then I read all the New Yorker things, I'm going to write like that, nothing. And then I think, like, screw all them, I'm going to just write whatever the hell I want. Then I write a story based on text messages, or a guy killing himself on Facebook, or some weird thing, send it, obviously nothing. And I just, so I've also been trying to guess, when you read the winning entry, what is it about this that was so good? And short stories are weird, because even my collection and every collection, you ask what's the best, and everyone's got a different answer. And I think of it the old kind of rock and roll way, like compiling an album. I mean, I know albums, no one listens to albums, but back in the day, we compiled it. You had a fast song, a slow song. So that's been my approach to writing it now, because I haven't given up on being published in these things. I'll still do it, but I don't know the formula. I have no idea what it is. So, but also maybe the lesson is writing for market is, and that's copywriting. That's what I did as you write for a client. So, Anyway.
So one more thing that I want to ask, which we did not explore much, is about writing children's books. So, what is your experience? Is it how do you shift your focus from writing a adult novel to a children's fiction, and what is the sort of mindset when you write it?
So that just came out of having kids, and you buy in that first year of panic, you buy a lot of books for the kids, and you're looking at their milestones, and there are a lot of obviously you read the classics, Dr. Seuss, Julia Donaldson, and Roald Dahl, and all that. But there are a lot of mediocre books, and which sell a lot of copies. And me and my brother, and this is when I was struggling to write Seven Moons, and I said, screw trying to write these big literary novels that no one will read. Let's write A Hungry Caterpillar. That thing sells 1 million copies every year, and I'm sure because my brother's an illustrator and designer. And so that was how it started, and we were aiming at that 0 to 4 market where parents are buying lots of stuff. And so, Where Shall I Poop was sold really well, because, literary tastes may change, but kids are going to poop, right? And your parents are going to want potty training books. And so, so it started that. And then last one, like you said, Sleep. And now we've got an insect one. So it's a fun, kind of low pressure thing to start the year. So my year is always, so now I just finished the Ant one. I'm doing, but it's not, still hard. It's not easy. I thought it'd be easier to do it. Same process. I read a lot of the kids' books and realize, okay, because those are the harshest critics. If they're bored, they're not going to be polite like my editors. And so, so it's been a fun project, but now we've got about 6 titles. And so plan is a couple of titles every year, but my kids are now 7 and 10. They've outgrown this potty training stuff. So I need to switch to young adult. But no, it's good to have lots of projects. If I had one thing on my to-do list, follow up a Booker winning novel, I'd probably be paralyzed. But now it's okay. Write a little kids book, some short stories, an article here, and also write a novel on So it's all fun, but it's all hard work.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. So all of our audience are like, passing on their thank yous to you. It's like everybody's saying like,
Yes,
thank
I
you
saw
for your...
some very sweet messages there. Thank you very much. Yes.
So yeah, before you leave, we would like to take a quick snapshot with the entire group, right? Just a second.
Sure.
Okay, I'm taking a snapshot. All right, everybody come on screen. This is big. All happy smiles. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Shehan, for being here. And best of luck for all your future books. We love them and we'll always love them in the future as well.
Oh, thank you very much. Very sweet. Thank you. Very kind, baby. Thanks.
All right.
Enjoy the chat. And are you guys writing tomorrow? I'll be up tomorrow at 4. I hope you guys, well, doesn't have to be 4, but yeah.
Yep.
Even on a Sunday. Okay. Great.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.